Chapter 13. What comes around goes around. Believe it or not, that conference call really lit a fire under my butt. I was overcome with this feeling of euphoria. I was marinating in it. I was crushing my sales goals. I was on track to hit a new company sales record. People were starting to notice, especially to my chagrin, one person in particular. His name was Bob. I was hitting my stride and it felt really good. I finally found my groove and did it all in spite of my boss. Sure, he didn't make it easy on me, but Bob wasn't going to be the end of me at Flushy. He didn't let off the gas pedal, but it didn't matter. It took me a bit to get off the ground, but ultimately the wait was worth it. I was taking on additional responsibilities. Heck, I won 3 consecutive sales competitions. Another day at Flushy meant another day to change the world. At first, this day seemed like any other. I got my coffee, started up my computer terminal, and waited for my computer to load. The previous night, I worked until about 11 p.m. It wasn't glamorous, but the money was phenomenal. Sure, I didn't have much of a social life, but how many 25-year-old kids do you know that can buy a sports car? I logged into my computer around 7:45 a.m. I remembered the exact time because Bob had actually shown up early for once in his life. I thought it must be Christmas because it was a miracle to see a manager show up before the starting bell. Good on him. Maybe he was turning a new leaf. Bob casually strolled on over to my desk. He dropped off a large white piece of paper at each desk along his way. For once, he didn't give me the stink eye. This was all so reminiscent of back in grade school when a teacher would drop an exam on your desk. He dropped off my sales numbers and a performance evaluation. I flipped it over and, like usual, had crushed my sales targets. The striking part of the review was that under the overall performance for my evaluation, it was marked Performance Rating Not Acceptable. Not acceptable? I'm crushing my sales targets, I protested aloud. When I read further into the assessment, it pointed to concerns around my documentation of sales calls, response rate, adherence to the approved talking points, suboptimal quoting, and lack of utilization around the company script. So let me get this straight. I'm being heavily measured against things that are not sales, even though I am selling policies. I realized this was just business, but I felt slighted. This all felt deeply personal and nowhere near professional or objective. I know in business people say don't take it personally, but this was personal to me. On the bottom of the review it read, "Mike, you lack focus, intention, and professional maturity. Please pivot the focus on what you can control and conquer. Don't focus on the uncontrollable aspects of the job. Needs to focus more on the task at hand and not the bigger picture." Bob was hovering around the other salespeople trying to drum up small talk. In reality, he was circling the wagons. They were far too polite to tell him to go pound sand. We briefly made eye contact, and I motioned him over to my cubicle. He pretended not to see me and walked away. "What a coward," I said. What was I supposed to expect? This guy was highly suspect. I just got bad marks, and I'm the highest performing salesperson on the sales floor. I started making various forms of nonsense noises as I was thinking. I began rocking back and forth in my chair. I put my hands together to form a triangle and thought about all of the things on this review. I stood up with the review in my hand and started scanning the room again to see if Bob was still around somewhere. He had retreated back into his office, so I got up and found my way over to his office. My performance review in hand, I barged my way into his office to begin my tirade. Bob was waiting for me. "What's going on, Mike?" "What's going on?" I asked in a sarcastic tone. I held up my review and pointed to it. This is what's going on, Bob." "Your review? What about it?" "Let's drop the charade, Bob. What is this?" "I've been meaning to set some time up to discuss it with you. As you can imagine, given that it's our monthly review, I've been quite busy around the office." Bob glanced down at his computer monitor and clearly pretended to start searching through his calendar. "How about we set something up for next week? How does that sound? I can fit you in on Monday at 10:30 or Tuesday at 11 o'clock. Which do you prefer?" "We're going to deal with this right now." "Mike, I'd love to, but I'm a little busy at the moment." Before he could finish his sentence, I cut him off. "You're right, you're busy. Busy with me right now." "Mike, you barged into my office. There's got to be something important on your mind. What specifically do you seem to have a problem with? How can I help you?" This review is the most subjective piece of garbage I've ever laid eyes on." "Tell me more." "Tell me more? Are you kidding me? Well, firstly, you said that only 90% of the time I use the approved company script. Why does it matter what percentage of the time that I deviate from your pre-approved line of questioning? I have the highest closing ratio in the office." "Ah, so you want me to open the kimono. Statistics have shown that the best salespeople are those who stick to the company-approved script 100% of the time. They perform more efficiently than those who don't." "I'm the #1 salesperson here. I won the last 3 sales competitions. I'm the highest producing salesman in company history." "We know and we appreciate that, Mike. Just how effective you can be. Just imagine how effective you could be if you just stuck to the approved company script. Imagine, Mike, not at 90%, but at 100%. All I could do was blink and take deep breaths. Long, protracted breaths, almost like a yogi. Maybe I would take David's advice and do some yoga. "So what you're saying is that sales don't matter? Is that what you're trying to tell me, Bob?" "Not at all, Mike. What matters is that you learn to do as you're told. You need to lean into the process and not fight it. What matters is that you need to be coachable and learn. If you don't like that, then you can go work somewhere else. If you don't like that, then I suggest you start refreshing your resume." Bob was clearly starting to bait me into an argument, so I decided to end the conversation and go back to my desk. "Bob, as always, it's been enlightening speaking with you," I said sarcastically. I did an about-face and headed back to my desk. Bob was completely unfazed and just went back to pretending to work. This guy had to be one of the least self-aware people in the history of human beings. Even for a manager, this guy was dense. He had a way when it came to dealing with people. To say it nicely, he was a blunt instrument. He viewed programming computer software no differently than influencing human behavior. As far as I could tell, he looked at us like a bunch of ones and zeros. When I got back to my desk, I put the review right where it belonged, in the trash bin. I booted my computer terminal back up and started sipping on my coffee. It was barely room temperature, but I forced it down anyways. The way I figured it, Bob was setting me up to fail. It is what it is. My computer took a little longer to boot up than normal. Ordinarily, I would have thought nothing of it. Maybe Bob fired me and didn't tell me. When my computer loaded, a rapid sequence of notifications popped up on my screen. There were 50 unread emails in my inbox, all of which marked urgent. That was a little out of step, but nothing too extraordinary. The first email read, "Message, request a call, confidential." I figured it was a phishing email or some kind of spam. At first, I hesitated to open it. The email body was blank. I scrolled through email after email, all with similar headlines. I mean, what in the world was this about? After digging through the emails, I finally found the source. The email header read, "Confidential, senior leadership eyes only." So, naturally, I clicked on it immediately. The body of the email read, "Mark, we've been subjected to another routine audit by the Department of Insurance. They're poking around. I think they're just on a fishing expedition. Allegedly, they have seen an increase in the number of consumer complaints due to non-payment of claims. They're asking for the following: our claims settlement ratio, our process for claims handling, the investment income, our speed-to-pay ratio, an explanation of our key accounts loss ratio, current GAAP financial statements, an on-site audit of company records, an explanation of the deficit in the employee life accounts." We need to clean this up before we file with the Securities and Exchange Commission for our initial public offering. If we don't respond within 10 business days, it will result in a $100,000 per day penalty. We need to figure this out quick. We've been punting this ball for far too long. I can move some things around until the IPO, but that won't make it go away. One more thing. This is the stickler. They are asking for an in-person audit led by Todd. How in the world do you plan on accomplishing that with Todd on his vacation? I wasn't 100% certain about a lot of that stuff, but it doesn't sound great. An instant message popped up on my screen. It was the president of Flushy, David Berrigan. The president of the company was instant messaging me. Wait a minute. The president of the company was instant messaging me? Why in the world? Mike, it's been a while. How's everything going? I replied back, Everything's going great, David. How are things with you? Great, great. It looks like an email meant for Mark alias was accidentally sent over to you this morning. He's the head of compliance and finance. What I'm going to need you to do is go ahead, find it, and delete it. David, there's a problem. I opened it and read it. For the next 5 minutes, the chat read, David Berrigan is typing. You did. I see. Why'd you do that? This was the president of the company, not one of my knucklehead buddies. This guy was a big freaking deal. This wasn't shooting the breeze with Dean at the watering hole. I had a massive decision to make. Do I lie or tell the truth? Sometimes doing the right thing isn't really doing the right thing, especially if it ends up getting me fired. So I lied. It was an accident. My bad. The chat abruptly ended and my computer terminal shut down. Okay, that was weird. I decided to get up and stretch my legs. I think that conversation earned me another cup of coffee. I strolled on back to the break room kitchen and refilled my mug. As I moseyed on back to my seat about 10 or 15 minutes later, I looked up and there were two nameless suits towering over me. How can I help you fine gentlemen? Are you Mike Allen? One of the suits asked. Yes, I'm Mike Allen. How can I help you? One of the suits pulled out his phone and started whispering to someone on the other line. I didn't realize Flushy had a plethora of 1940s-style goons on the company payroll. So, can I help you? We need you to vacate this space and come with us immediately, they said in unison. Ha ha ha, really funny. Are you guys from IT? My terminal shut down and... Immediately. Come with us, as in right now. One of the goons gestured with his arm over to the nearest exit. I started following them down a series of corridors. I figured this was either some mafia-style hit job, or they were possibly escorting me out of the building. We walked for another 10 minutes. The whole excursion was rather exhausting. We walked through doors, upstairs, downstairs, up elevators, down elevators. They didn't say a word the entire time. We finally arrived at a large, silverish-looking elevator. This was a guarded elevator. It clearly was private. It was clearly important. Fellas, where are we going? The two suits both gestured over to the elevator and politely escorted me in. The elevator looked like it was made of platinum, or at least platinum-plated. I looked over at one of the suits, and he had a clear bulge by his upper torso. I wasn't a rocket scientist, but I'm pretty sure that was a gun. I started getting increasingly nervous. Sweat was dripping down the back of my neck. The elevator was going up to the 20th floor. The elevator had arrived, and the doors opened. I started to walk forward, and one of the suits grabbed my shoulder. Not yet, Mr. Allen. Two people holding briefcases got onto the elevator, and we continued to go up to the 30th floor. When we arrived at the 30th floor, the doors opened and another two people got on. We went up again, this time to the 40th floor, and the suits escorted us all off the elevator. This way, please, the suits said in unison to the entire group. People began to pile out of the elevator, and the suits escorted the group down a narrow corridor. The 40th floor was barren, aside from the brand-new furniture, which was still wrapped in plastic. At the end of the hallway, there was a large double-door entrance to what I assumed was an office or a conference room. Turns out it was a 180-degree view conference room. The suits opened the doors and led everyone in. In the corner of the room, there was a stenographer sitting, presumably waiting to take notes. There was a large conference table that looked to be a solid piece of hickory. The chairs were carved of what I could only describe as a pure ivory-type material. This conference room was nicer than my apartment. Heck, this conference room was nicer than my dream home. The two suits sat me down at the middle of the table, me on one side of the table and everyone else on the other side. All of a sudden, David Berrigan kicked open the doors of the conference room and everyone stood up. That was rather magnanimous of him. How fitting. "Please sit. Everyone down. Sit down." David Berrigan took the empty chair exactly opposite of me. I was face to face with the power. I was used to dealing with peons, people like me all day long, and on occasion Bob. But nothing like this. I wondered if he even remembered me during that interview we had. "What is this, the meeting of the 5 families? Am I about to be made an offer I can't refuse?" I said jokingly to break the ice. The room was dead silent. Everyone was looking at David Berrigan for cues. David Berrigan smiled and started to chuckle, which was followed by a bevy of uncomfortable corporate-style laughter. You know the kind, that obligatory kind of laugh people do when someone higher up laughs at a bad joke. "Mike, the first thing I need you to do right now is sign this NDA." He slid what looked like a phone book over to me. "I know it looks intimidating. The best way to approach it is by just flipping to the last page and sign where it says signature." Everyone awkwardly laughed out loud. "Is that an order or a suggestion?" "I mean, you don't have to sign the NDA. You can always go that route and see where that takes you." I quickly flipped to the last page and signed the NDA. I didn't want to be pushing up daisies, so to speak. David Berrigan quickly took the signed NDA and slid it over to someone at the end of the table. By the way she was dressed, I assumed that to be one of our many corporate attorneys on retainer for Flushy. The attorney at the end of the table flipped over to the last page to verify the signature. "Great, now that is out of the way. On to the business at hand. Mike, I just finished reading your last performance evaluation on the way up here." The attorney at the end of the table slid over a bunch of copies to the center of the conference room table. "You know what I think about your performance review?" I wasn't quite sure where this conversation was going, so I decided to just shake my head. "I think it was a bunch of rubbish. Ain't that right, boys?" David polled the room and encouraged people to speak up in agreement. He glanced around to make sure people were in line. There was a chorus of murmured agreement around the table. "In fact, I think you are just the guy we have been looking for to spearhead our experimental agency distribution channel strategy. What we're talking about here is the transformation of our sales department. Your results are impressive. What else can we say?" I looked around the room, waiting for the punchline. To my pleasant surprise, nobody was laughing. "David, I don't know what to say." "Then just say yes." "Yes. Wait. So you want me to take Bob's job?" No. We want you to be our Senior Vice President of Agency Sales Distribution." "Agency distribution? I thought we didn't have agents." "You're just the man we need to spearhead this new division. And do you know why? Why Mike Allen is the right man for the job?" I couldn't even complete a sentence. "It's because, well, you get results. The best results, in fact. The other reason is that you speak the language of insurance agent. You know the lingo. You walk the walk and talk the talk. You know how to connect with those kinds of people." I was visibly awestruck. I was half expecting my first corporate execution over here, and I stumbled my way into a promotion. This has all got to be some deranged candid camera show, right? So what would I be doing exactly? That's all in the details. Don't worry about it for now. David Berrigan started snapping his fingers, and his secretary came over with a packet. He handed me the packet and said, "This is the comp package. Go ahead and open it." The offer would give me company car, private corner office, a private secretary, a secretary for my secretary, a parking spot with my name on it, access to the company gym and spa, 100% paid health insurance, group life insurance, an executive key man life insurance policy, unlimited PTO, paid time off, paid company holidays, equity sharing, 100% tuition reimbursement, a monthly bonus, 100% 401k matching, a company pension fully vested day one, $350,000 a year starting salary, guaranteed 10% per year salary increases. That is one generous offer. Glad to have you as part of the SLT. That stands for Senior Leadership Team. Get used to it, Mike. Welcome to the good life. As the newest edition of the SLT, we will need to get you up to speed on the business, on how the company makes the hamburger, so to speak. Someone at the end of the table slid over a giant packet, along with another non-disclosure agreement for me to sign. Read that packet and get up to speed by, what is it now, about 2 p.m.? Let's say 0900 tomorrow morning. I assumed it was one of those asks that was more of an ultimatum rather than an actual request. David had a way of mincing his words. Tomorrow we're calling you up to the big leagues. Time to get off the bench and get in the game. You will meet with each member of the SLT, and they'll give you a crash course in each department. Right now, we don't need you to be proficient. We just need you to know enough to be dangerous. David Berrigan grabbed the edge of the conference room table and stood up. He extended his arm across the table to me. I reached out and he grabbed my hand. We shook hands, he put on his aviators, and he whisked out of the room. Everyone else stood up and followed David out of the room. I couldn't help but stare down at the packet on the table. Before I looked back up, the room had completely emptied out. I quickly grabbed the packet off the conference table and headed back down to the sales floor. You ever drive home from work and not remember the actual trip? Like not remembering the actual drive home? Yet somehow you arrived back at your home safe and sound. That was me walking back to the sales floor. Everything and everyone just sort of passed me on by. I had blinders on. Before I knew it, I was back at my cubicle. I started gathering up my stuff and began to shove it into a cardboard box. Dean had slithered on over to my desk. He immediately began to barrage me with a flurry of questions. "Mike, what in the heck happened? Where'd they take you? What's with the box? Did they let you go? Talk to me, man. What's up?" I looked over at Dean without saying a word. I kind of grinned at him while shoving the various knickknacks on my desk into this box. "Oh, man, I'm so sorry, man. That really sucks. They let you go, huh?" He put his hand on my shoulder and patted me on the shoulder for a second. It was a light patting, just enough to get my attention. "Dean, it's not exactly what you think. Did they at least give you some severance pay?" I cracked a smile and said, "Believe it or not, they actually gave me a promotion." Dean shook his head in disbelief, and he said, "You're kidding me, right? They promoted Mike Allen? To what? Head of sanitation?" I cleared my throat and said, "My new role will be as the Senior Vice President of Agency Sales Distribution." Dean started laughing out loud, so much so that the entire sales floor could hear him. "You had me going there for a second, Mike. Come on, man. What really happened? We don't have agents. You, a senior vice president? Bah!" I looked at Dean dead in his eyes and reiterated, "Senior Vice President of Agency Sales Distribution." Dean's tone quickly course-corrected to a more serious disposition. I took it he started to believe me. He stood up a little taller, brought his shoulders back a bit more, and said, "Wow, I don't know what to say. How do you think I feel?" "How'd you find out?" "David presented me an offer like 30 minutes ago. What was I going to do, turn it down?"
"David? David Berrigan? You mean the president of the company? What, are you guys on a first-name basis?"
"Dean, I'd love to chit-chat with you, but I gotta go take a private elevator to my new office." I snuck in a smile as I was shoving things into my cardboard box.
"Oh, it's like that. Mr. Big Time over here. He gets a big fancy promotion and then forgets who mentored him along the way. It's like that, huh?"
"Don't worry, Dean. I won't forget all the little people that helped me along the way. I mean, I do need a secretary if you're interested." I stopped packing my things for a second, and we both laughed at how absurd an idea that would be.
"Although it sounds tempting, being your peon and all, I'll have to pass for now. I kind of like my little slice of Flushy heaven here on the sales floor."
"If you ever change your mind—"
Does Bob know yet?"
I smiled and completely stopped in my tracks. "Oh yeah, Bob. We have some unfinished business to discuss." I put my box down and walked over to his office. It was a short walk. I made sure to have an audible thudding knock on his door, the kind of knock that made an impression. Knock, knock, knock. I pulled the door open and saw myself in. Bob turned around in his chair.
"Oh, Mike, what do you want?"
"Did you hear the news?"
"What news? Unlike popular belief, I'm a very busy person. Get to the point or get out of here."
Sure, no problem, Bob." I got in nice and close, violating any kind of personal space boundaries we had. I wanted to make sure he heard me loud and clear. "Watch your back, Bob," I whispered affirmatively.
"What did you just say to me? Are you out of your mind?"
I smiled and said, "You heard me. And if you ever talk to me like that again, one time, ever again, I'll have you fired, Bob." Bob stood up out of his chair. He practically threw the chair to the side in a pathetic attempt at intimidation. All I did was shoot him back a big smile.
"Who do you think you are talking to me like that? You're fired. Go clear out your desk, now, before I call security."
I got right up in his face and fronted up on him. We squared off, and it seemed to have the desired effect of having him peep down. "Who do I think I am? I'm your new boss." Bob squinted his eyes and clearly was dumbfounded by my declaration. "Yeah, that's right. You didn't hear the news. I'm part of the SLT now. I'm untouchable." Bob scoffed and laughed under his breath. I don't blame him for not believing me. "Now sit down, Bob, or I will sit you down. Pick up your chair from the floor, or I'll put you down there with it." Bob had this look of complete bewilderment on his face. It was priceless. He didn't quite know what to do. I started snapping my fingers and said, "Bob, did I stutter? Pick your chair up and sit down." He picked up his chair off the floor and acrimoniously sat back down. He grabbed his phone and started dialing up HR. Mind you, Bob hadn't uttered a word. I sat back in the chair and smiled as he called his human resources.
"I'm calling HR right now. You can sit there with that stupid grin on your face all you want." Ring, ring, ring. "Hi, this is Bob Lundy."
His bloodthirsty tirade was interrupted by the person on the other line.
"Well, I've got Mike Allen here in my office, and I need to process his termination effective immediately." "Uh-huh. Yeah, but—" "Uh-huh. I understand."
He sat there silent for some time, his life drained from his body. I stuck out my wrist and pointed down at my watch to let Bob know to hurry up. I was getting impatient, so I just started talking again. "See, the thing is, Bob, you have a choice to make. Do you want to go out on your back or get on your knees and beg me for your job?" Bob hung up the phone. He gulped and stared at me with this lifeless expression. His skepticism had subsided, but had not quite fully receded. "Don't worry, Bob. I won't make your life half as miserable as you made mine. That'd be inhumane. That'd be arbitrarily cruel. That'd be someone who lacked professional maturity." I started laughing with sinister overtones. The power was overwhelming. This is what power feels like. I'm beginning to like it. I think I could get used to this. I noticed Bob had a sandwich on his desk. Turns out he was about to start his lunch when I barged in on him. "Is that your lunch?"
"Yeah, it's a pastrami sandwich from Polino's down the street."
"Oh, Polino's. Do they deliver?"
"No, I had one of the interns wait in line to pick it up for me. Around this time, it takes about an hour or so."
The chit-chat made Bob calm down a bit, like a cow being led to the slaughterhouse. "An hour! Wow! That must be one great sandwich."
"It is."
"Is that like your favorite place or something?"
"It is." "Mike, what's your point? Why are we talking about my sandwich?"
"My point is, Bob, my point is, shut up and give me your sandwich."
"What? No, I'm not giving you my sandwich. That's my lunch."
I tapped my fingers on my leg. Tap, tap, tap. "See, the problem you have right now is, Bob, is that you still think that you matter. You think that you have power. You think that people care about what you have to say. Well, Bob, you don't. I'm not going to ask you again. Give me your sandwich." Tap, tap, tap. Bob degradingly slid the sandwich over to me without making eye contact. "Put the sandwich in my hand, Bob." He begrudgingly picked up the plate and put it in my outstretched hand. I took a big, slow bite of that sandwich, all the while looking Bob dead in his eyes. I slowly chewed that pastrami sandwich. He was right. This place was worth that wait.
"Wow, that's a good sandwich,"
I said obnoxiously with a big chunk of sandwich still in my mouth. I stood up from my chair with the sandwich still in my hand, turned around towards the open door. I took the rest of the sandwich in my hand and hurled it across the office. The sandwich broke apart and scattered across the floor. "Now, Bob, considering your fancy lunch, I'm assuming it was very expensive?"
"It was a $30 sandwich."
"Now, Bob, considering your $30 sandwich is splattered across the sales floor, as your boss, I recommend you go pick it up." I licked my fingers clean and didn't break eye contact with Bob. Bob didn't flinch one bit. Bob was unmoved by my request, so I asked more affirmatively, "Go pick up your sandwich."
"What? No, I'm not doing that,"
he protested like a child refusing to clean up his room. "Oh, you're going to pick up the sandwich, and I mean you are going to, and not some poor intern."
"No, don't be absurd. I'm not a janitor."
I could tell Bob was going to persist on with his little protest in order to retain what was left of his manhood. If there is one thing I've learned from my managers is that you can't let your employees have free thought. You have to break their will, make them absolutely submissive, and eliminate any free thought. Oh, I put him in his place. "Bob, you're going to pick up that sandwich. Or else."
"Or else what? Picking up a sandwich isn't in my job description."
"Well, you can pick up the sandwich, or choose not to, and see where that takes you." Bob slowly stood up and hunched his shoulders. He escorted me out of his office and went to go pick up the sandwich. It was my first taste of power, maybe a bit vengeful and maybe a bit brash. What could I say? He deserved it. I deserved it. "Great! Don't forget to scrub the carpet when you're finished. It looks like that deli mustard got pretty deep into the crevasses of the carpet. I'm sure you'll do a great job, Bob. You always aim to please." I got my stuff and headed up to my new office. When I stepped off the elevator, I was greeted by my new secretary. "Mike?" "Yes, nice to meet you." "Hi, I'm Gilroy. I'll be your secretary. Follow me, please." We walked through rows of empty cubicles. We walked for like 10 minutes until we arrived at 2 big, beautiful white doors. "Is that marble?" "Nothing but the best, boss." I opened the doors and slowly peeked my head in the office. It was barren, nothing but a desk, a chair, and an empty bookcase. At least it was a large space with lots of potential. From wall to wall, the office probably measured 40 feet square. I put my stuff down next to my desk and pulled out the packet. Gilroy was standing in the doorway waiting for something. I wasn't quite sure what she wanted or what I was supposed to do with a secretary. "Gilroy, what do I do next? I mean, how does having a secretary work? I've never had one before." "First, I'm an executive assistant, so let's correct that. I'm not a secretary. This isn't the 1950s. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean it like that." Gilroy started laughing out loud. Clearly, we were going to work well together. "No, I'm just messing with you. Why don't you start with that packet, and if any questions come up, ping me, and I can help you find an answer. My desk is right outside your office. I'm on call from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. "Yeah, the packet. That sounds good." Gilroy shut the door to give me some privacy and went over to her desk. I opened the packet, and it only had a few documents in it. I guess this insurance stuff isn't so complicated after all. The first document was the company business plan, or at least a synopsis of the business plan. The first paragraph was titled Mission, Vision, and Values. It was your typical run-of-the-mill corporate-style writing, the kind where you put a lot of words down on paper that mean absolutely nothing of substance. Kind of like when a nonfiction writer starts writing fiction for the first time. It read, "Mission, to provide the best-in-class, easiest to purchase, and lowest-cost life insurance experience in the world. Vision, to revolutionize and dominate the insurance industry." The writing was fairly simplistic, no 3-syllable words or anything like that. I mean, overall, it felt like it was written at a 4th or 5th grade reading level. Whether this was done on purpose or not, I had no idea. Values. At Flushy, we value being a first mover, acting fast, and being agile. Nothing mind-blowing here, mostly mundane corporate speak. I'm not really sure what I was expecting. That was it. That was it. That was the entire first page. I flipped over to the next page, and it continued. This all kind of felt rather pedestrian, almost like a rough draft or some kind of redacted version of a business plan. The next page listed key financial data and had a large red "Confidential" diagonally stamped across the page. It read, "Context. Flushy is a bottom-line company. We care about the bottom line above all else. Insurance companies have 2 predominant sources of revenue-generating vehicles. The first way is through writing policies and collecting policy premium from customers. The second way is by taking that collected premium and investing it in the stock market." Listed below that statement was a series of financial ratios. Although I had a business degree, I hadn't familiarized myself with any of those ratios in some time. It read, Policy retention ratio 99.9%, expense ratio 7%, loss ratio 15%, combined ratio 23%, solvency ratio 100%, commission expense ratio 5%, claims settlement ratio 81%, claims resolution 51 days, investment yield 47%. The section below that was the valuation section. It read, Flushy has a current valuation of $5 billion and expects a velocity on that figure to be 20 times by the pre-IPO funding round. We have established an anticipatory runway of late Q3 or early Q4. That was it. That was all the second page had to offer. I flipped through to the next page, and it had an explanation of the business model. It read, In our industry, there are numerous ways to win. The key is to find a clear way to win, a clear way to differentiate. At Flushy, we have created an incredible use case for customers. Our industry is a crowded space. It's hyper-competitive, fragmented, and is undergoing massive disruption. Every Insure-tech has great people and great tech, so we make a concerted effort to admire and acquire both great people and great tech from our competition. The Insure-tech space is now a $100 billion industry, and Flushy is in the vanguard to blow that number up. Our vision is to be the first trillion-dollar insurance carrier. The old model of collecting premiums and doing nothing for clients is about as archaic as a fax machine. We intend to upheave all of that by bringing the industry the likes of which it has never dreamt of. A lot of what we knew to be true or our perceived biases need to be challenged. Consumers are more educated, price-aware, and demanding than ever. After reading all that, I figured it was time to take a break. 20 minutes ago, I was berating my old boss and tossing his lunch across the sales floor. Now I'm 3 pages deep into a business plan that I can barely comprehend. I stood up for a second and stretched my legs out. When I looked up to stretch my neck out, I noticed a security camera staring me right in the face. Directly above my desk, there was a security camera with a red light blinking. That's a little weird. I stepped outside my office to get a good lay of the land. When I started looking around, I noticed that there were security cameras just about as far as the eye could see. I turned to Gilroy and asked, "What's up with all the cameras? What's the deal?" She laughed. "Did you not notice them all over the sales floor? They're set up all over the building like that." "Can't say that I did. Creepy." Gilroy laughed and went back to typing up something on her computer. I stepped back into my office and lethargically continued through the business plan. The next section read, "Strategy. Our strategy is to offer the lowest price insurance through better pricing synergies, better tech, better data, creative financing, and strategic partnerships." What in the world is a pricing synergy? The remainder of the packet was more of the same. I finished it up in less than an hour. I decided to call it an early evening and headed out around 8:30 p.m. When I emerged from my office, Gilroy had already taken off for the day, and the office was completely emptied out. I broke for the exit and made sure to turn off all the lights on my way out. Who knows what I have in store for tomorrow?